in this episode.
And did someone tell you to ask me that? Because that's usually like a top 5 get Eli riled up. So
No.
It's.
I mean, I know it's high power. So just explain why.
Oh man, let me tell you right now. Oh gosh, so I really don't like the high power at all.
In an obtuse world, Mark and Jefe will combine military, law enforcement, and general FUD knowledge to keep you vertical. Welcome to the Live, Laugh, Larp podcast.
Yep. Good. All right. Hey, everybody, what's going on? Thanks for joining us on another edition of the Live, Laugh, Larp podcast. We really appreciate you guys swinging by and checking things out. As always, we have our wonderful co-host, Jefe Actual. What's going on, brother?
Actually, I'm now woefully prepared. We had a comment that I actually wanted to bring up.
Oh.
It was the...
Scroll.
I'll find it later, but
okay.
Yeah, I'm here, and it's going to be October 1st, so happy pumpkin season to all you basic people
You're
out
drinking
here.
your pumpkin spice right there, I see.
No, it's a garage beer that you gave me. Unopened, so I didn't get roofied or anything like that.
But we really do appreciate you guys swinging on by. We have seen some growth over the last few months, and it's all because of you guys listening and sharing this out. Continue to do so. We would really appreciate that. And we've got a lot of other awesome guests. Tonight is going to be another great guest. We are really, really happy and kind of last minute too. So we really do appreciate that. I think you found it. Did you find it?
Yes, I found it.
Oh.
Or the Spotify comment.
I
don't know if we want to do that right now, but because I don't want us to forget. Spotify comment. I think it was the last episode. Spotify is the master race of streaming music and podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. Have you figured out who sent that one?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So thank you, T. Schmidt for it. Thank you.
Yeah, he's a wonderful duck schmacker. So
local duck schmacker.
Yeah, local duck schmacker, and that is actually going to play nicely into our guests here in just a second. But before we get into that, real quick, a couple different things. The administrative part of the podcast, first and foremost, is if you guys are listening on whatever platform, regardless if that is YouTube or the Firearms Radio Network or Spotify. Thank you, Apple Podcasts. I prefer Apple Podcasts. I'm an Apple guy. But yeah, leave a comment, leave a like, share it with your friends. Just interact with us any way you guys choose to do so. You can
majority Spotify.
Yeah, you can even, if you really want to, you can even email us. But if you do, just make sure that you put Jefe in the title if you're going to send like
all the feet
pics or something like that.
All the feet pics.
Yeah, there you go.
More feet, more better.
So we've got our comment of this podcast. So thanks again. Appreciate you, T. Schmidt. The next thing rather is our title sponsor, and that is, of course, Attero Arms. We do appreciate all of their support. They are my favorite mounting solution for an AK. Hopefully here soon I may find a mounting solution for an M44 carbine, which would be really cool.
Still no J-frames, but still no J-frames. Shield arm. Now, see, we're getting semantics at this point. Just because they mounted a J-frame 45 offset off of AK on their mounts doesn't mean that we have an optics mount for a J-frame just yet. So,
but again, I feel it's almost there.
I feel like it's not even close. I feel like it's not even there. If you look at their Instagram, it's all gold plated machine guns, and not a single J-frame in sight. So,
well, I mean, which would you rather have?
J-frame, obviously.
Yeah. If anyone has ever carried an M249, they know how much they love to hate that thing. So.
Yes. It's like 35 pounds of maybe hopefully it works.
Hopefully it works. Yeah. Heaven forbid you actually have to insert a magazine to it, right?
That's the 249.
That's what I said. 249.
Oh, I thought we were talking about 240s for some reason.
He's doing a 249, right?
I don't know, man.
Is it?
He's not doing a J-frame, so that's all I care about.
Jesse, you need to set us straight. Is it a 249 or is it 240? Set us straight in the comments. Something like that.
So yes, Attero Arms, premier. First of all, premier sponsor of the channel, and the best way to effectively and
securely
and economically.
Yeah, that's a good way to
attach an optic red dot to your AK platforms, and maybe soon some Mosin. So
maybe,
but not J-frames. But
and then they're also working on a solution for magnified optics too. I think that's pretty cool.
That's cool.
But with all of that being said, we do have an awesome guest. That's going to kind of piggyback with
Caleb.
Caleb
mentioned him several times in our interview. What was that, a month ago now?
Yeah, it would have been,
a month ago. The alleged best friend of Caleb.
Mm-hmm.
We have Eli Duckworth with Cabot Arms. Eli, how are you doing this evening?
Well, first of all, before we get into how I'm doing, you're gonna have to slow down with the whole alleged best friend of Caleb Daniels. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know. He carries a damn German pistol. I don't know if I can be associated with a man that carries a German gun. But no, with that being said, Caleb and I are obviously we're extremely close, and I'm doing pretty good tonight. I hope y'all are as well.
Yeah, we'll get into, because I want to talk about your guys' show, what Steel and Styled. But before that, tell us a little bit. Who are you? What do you do?
Well, my name, Eli Duckworth. You obviously know that. I work for Alchemy Custom Weaponry and Cabot Guns. That's my 9 to 5. Although I'm gonna be honest with you, it seems like my 24/7 the way things go and the kind of way I run that ship. So it ends up being a pretty full-time job. And then, of course, I have the 1776 Duck page on Instagram, also on YouTube now. The YouTube is relatively new. I just started it earlier this year. It's doing all right. I'm definitely not a video person. I like taking pictures a whole lot more than video, but it does well. And basically, when someone asks me to describe myself, it's pretty difficult to do so. I like a lot of different things. I'm kind of into a lot of different things, but really, I think the best way to describe myself is a prophet of John Moses Browning. So that seems to be the best description I've found so far.
Okay, so lot to then cover if you're a prophet to spread the good word. How many are we like talking? How many books are we talking about when it comes to evangelizing John Moses Browning?
Oh, I'm telling you, I'm a door knocker, a street sweeper. I'm telling you, I spread the good word via the mouth. But if I had to, I'm telling you, I might have to start writing books because I just get super jazzed up about a lot of this stuff and get kind of lost in the sauce, So I might have to start writing some stuff. I know that Caleb and I have talked about, writing a lot of our nerdier stuff down. His way less cool than mine because he isn't in the 1911s or Browning. But yeah, definitely something that we need to do because, man, I got a lot of stuff to talk about when it comes to John Moses Browning.
So, so what day was the 1911 created? Was it like the day 7 or day 8? Was it just always there? Was it kind of like the word?
I think it was there in the beginning.
Yeah, that's good place to be. I think with the 1911s.
In the beginning, there was nothingness, God, and the 1911.
Okay, well, so let's I guess start from the beginning of the Gospels. How did you get so big into the 1911 and John Moses Browning?
Well, I was in the shower one day and a light stricken down from heaven, and I looked up and I said, John, I don't know if this is the best time to see me, with no clothes on, but he said unto me, you have been chosen, to part the black seas of polymer and to free those people from the grips of Austrian persuasion. And so that's that's just kind of how I got into it. But no, what it is I grew up in a family that wasn't really into guns, which is kind of funny, especially for someone that walks into my gun room. You would not expect that. But they weren't anti-gun. They just weren't really into guns. My family was a big car family. Dad was a NASCAR pit crewman. He ran a big T-shirt printing shop where we did shirts for all the racetracks and used to spend a lot of weekends as a kid going to races and the weekends and selling T-shirts and stuff like that. So grew up around racing mainly. always had a thing for history, and specifically American history. And it's one of those things where early on, I discovered that unlike other areas of history, American history cornerstones on the firearm. And it's one of those things where you look at, like, not that you ever would want to look back at like English history, but you look back at like, Great Britain's history. They're a country that predates firearms. So for their history, for that history of that dumb, awful island, firearms are a relatively small part of their history. For the United States of America, it's all we've ever known. From the very beginning, we've had guns. So it's one of those things where, as I became more infatuated with American history, along with that came the small arms used by Americans throughout American history. And from there, it just kind of began to, culminate. I was really big into the Civil War. It's kind of one of them things. Let me rephrase: the War of Northern Aggression, as we would call it.
I just spent like half a week in the South there in Nashville, so I got all of that while I was there.
All right, yeah. So I was really big into the War of Northern Aggression growing up, and one of the guns that I really, really liked from that era was the 1851 Navy Colt. And it's one of those things where it just begins to compound. You like the 1851 Navy, we end up liking an 1872 open top or Richard Mason's conversion. Then you start to get into a Colt single action army. And then you get to, God's gift to humanity, it's specifically Americans, the 1911 shortly thereafter. So it's one of those things where the path of American small arms and just American history in general has kind of led me to this gun. And I just took to it from the minute I first saw one. I took to it, and I've never let go.
Yeah. So when we talked to Caleb, and I'm going to, he was quoting you about it. And it's been kind of like resonating inside of me ever since he said it. But it's like you had, the Scottish had the claymores, the Saracens had the scimitars, the English had the longbow, and for like the United States as a whole was like the firearms. And his big thing was we were listening to the gospel secondhand, so it'll be great to hear from firsthand. But about especially the 1911 is the good guy gun, the savior of the world is in the 1911. So how did you kind of come up with that, and like I guess that worldview? And was that something that you just kind of naturally fell into your lap, or was it something that you got pieces from here, got pieces from like the Vickers guides and from TV and from books?
Yeah, so that's a quote. I told Caleb that a long time ago. Caleb and I will have these talks where it's almost like, I'm telling you, if you didn't know us and you were standing outside the door, you'd think we were getting high. I mean, we just get this euphoria of firearms and excitement. That's why I love Caleb, because very few people get excited about guns like Caleb and I do. And I told him, I was like, you look back through history, and it comes back to that history aspect, right? Like you go back to the Japanese officers with their swords, that a lot of them had been in their families for hundreds of years. Mm-hmm. Okay, because again, Japanese culture really predates the firearm. And so I thought about it, and I've heard so many stories, of, I had this old 1911, and my grandpa had it. He brought it back and handed it down to my dad, and my dad handed it down to me, and it just kind of clicked to me. And I've always craved that because, boringly, my family doesn't have anything like that. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not the first gun owner in my family's history, but damn it, I'm the only one that probably should matter, because most of them had guns that didn't who cares if you owned them?
Yeah.
And so I've always wanted to have guns that my kids would want to have, and that the goal of owning them would be for them to be passed down to their kids and their kids. The first custom gun I ever did was a 1919 Colt government model, which a lot of people listen, hey, time out real quick. It wasn't the original and it wasn't correct, so don't get on me. But 1919 Colt government model. I just graduated college. Well, we'll call it graduated. It was 2020. when people were idiots. And so they kind of just sent us home from school one day, and that was it. And so it was one of those weird things where there weren't really any college parties. Or not parties, but there weren't like any graduation parties or anything like that. It was almost as if my class didn't even graduate or didn't exist. I mean, and I'm not here to try to have a sob story about it. I don't care about college.
Seems like you're doing well without it. So,
well, yeah. I mean, I got the degree and kept going, and it doesn't matter. No one's ever asked me about it since. So, when I graduated, I was like, I'm going to do something for myself because there's nothing else going on. And I sent that 1919 Cold Government model off to Nighthawk, and a big thing that I did, and Bob Reeves was even like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Is I put my last name on the front strap.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember telling somebody that, and they were like, "Well, I don't know why you do that. You just ruin the resale value." And I said, "Damn the resale value. I don't care. I don't want this gun to be resold." And so that's kind of where it stemmed from and this is not the first gun that bears my name now, and it's not going to be the last either. I like guns that are family guns, that have family history, that can be passed down to generation. Like I said, I've looked back at all the small arms, usually edged weapons, throughout history, and seen that lineage of things being handed down. And for some reason, that just hits me real hard. So, yeah, that's kind of where that came from.
I feel like a weight has been lifted off my chest when I hear stories like that, because what we have been doing in our family is we use a cattle brand, like our old family cattle brand, and we brand all our guns, especially with like wood stocks and everything like that. And I get that all the time too. Like, why would you do that? Now if you want to try to sell it, no one's going to want it, or you have to refinish it, or you're like, no, this is going to, hopefully my kids and my kids will enjoy these firearms. I mean, we have in my collection right now, I got my great grandpa's shotgun from 1920. It was a model Remington R11
Model 11.
Yeah,
Model 11, the A5 clone,
yes,
the American A5
I've
clone.
got one too.
Hell yeah!
Yeah, so
what caliber or what?
It's a 12 gauge.
12 gauge.
It's a 12 gauge shotgun. And, I have photos of him hunting with it.
Yeah.
I have photos of my grandpa and my dad hunting with it, and I have photos of me hunting with it.
That's so awesome, because I have the exact same shotgun, only 16 gauge. It was my grandmother's.
Yeah. I feel like that's like the base one. The Model 11 is like everyone has one, but it's a family heirloom. And you also have another one, don't you? A bring home.
Yeah, I've got the bring home, which is the Walther PPK. Yeah,
with the from the World War II Germans.
World War II Germans. That's right. Yeah. Still has the officer's name written in the holster and all that jazz. It's
borrowed. It's borrowed.
Silly goose brand on. Yeah. So, well, I had a quick question for you, Eli. You're talking about John Moses Browning and preaching the gospel. So the question then ends up becoming, which are you more of? Are you more of a fan of the 1911, or are you more of a fan of the high power?
Oh, that's not even a question. I mean, did someone tell you to ask me that? Because that's usually like a top 5 get Eli riled up. So
no. It's. I mean, I know it's high power. So just explain why.
Oh man, let me tell you right now. Oh gosh, so I really don't like the high power at all. And a lot of people kind of begin to, they think, oh, well, you just should love everything John Browning did. Well, let me hit you with this. Okay. First of all, let's talk about this. John Browning died in 1926. High power, technically at that time, P35 wouldn't be done for, 9 or 10 years. In that time, the Europeans, as Europeans typically do, managed to ruin what was probably going to end up being a pretty good pistol. The Belgians got involved. Actually, funny enough, a rifle I actually do like, the FAL. The guy who designed that, and Lord, don't ask me to pronounce his name because I butchered. I can't hardly pronounce a lot of American names, much less Belgian. But he actually worked on the Browning high power. But that's not neither here nor there. The Belgians kind of took it. They began to tweak it. Not uncommon. Winchester tweaked some of Browning's designs. Of course, there was a 10-year period leading up to the 1911's development that was full of Colt and Browning going back and forth. with the U.S. Army and specifically the Cavalry Board. So that's not an issue. But the problem is the French got involved. And let me tell you right now, the only thing that the French have ever done in the history of the world worth a damn is Napoleon and smokeless gunpowder. And ever since then, they are a useless country. And I just could not. They're just peasants, hold on a second. All of them are.
They made the croissant.
It's flaky and buttery,
isn't it?
It's flaky and buttery, man.
I'm a Wonder Bread kind of guy. If you ain't first, you're last. So, listen, it's one of those things where the high power is a gun that is roughly the same weight as a 1911. It's a little bit lighter. Okay, roughly the same size. That gun has a sharper recoil than a 9mm 1911. And hell, I'm gonna be honest with you, I enjoy shooting a 45 1911 more than I do a 9mm Browning high power. The trigger stock is absolutely garbage because it has a magazine disconnect, which is stupid. And to me, it's an extremely wanting gun, meaning that every time I shoot one, all I do is want a 1911. And it's funny because Ken Hackthorne, who is one of my best friends, I don't want to call him he may not think I'm one of his best friends, but he is I look up to him a lot, and him and I talk on the phone a lot. And it's funny because if anyone says they're a gun guy and Hack doesn't really think they're a gun guy, his kind of line is, well, yeah, but they shot a Browning high power. That tells you everything you need to know about them. And so I am certainly not alone in that. And I've had several, and every single one of them I've let go, and I don't really care to move guns down the road, to be honest with you. But every single one of them I've let go. They pale in comparison. If you really know how to use a 1911, it's just not a gun that will bring you any joy or spark any joy, as that one Asian meme says. But
so you went to Ken Hackathorn's little compound recently. Tell us how that all went.
How many red dots did you see?
Actually, what's funny is Hack has more red dots than I do.
Yeah.
So one.
And I do want to. There's a little bit of a side story, kind of going back. I'll talk about Ken here in just a second, but I do want to go back. Oh, yeah. I kind of lied to you earlier when I said I didn't have a gun that was kind of like an heirloom gun, kind of jumping the gun, if you will. I do have a gun. So Ken actually gave me his old duty pistol.
Ooh, wow!
It's well, first of all, it's my favorite gun I own. But it's not even about what the gun is. It's the emotional connection. Ken Hackthorne is the guy that got me into 1911s. He's the guy that got me into shooting. When no one around me knew how to use a gun, I turned to the Wilson Combat YouTube channel and taught myself. Not saying that wasn't a good idea. Listen, I've created a lot of bad habits by not having anyone and just going off YouTube videos. But I got into guns at the level I'm at now because of the Wilson Combat YouTube channel, because of Ken Hackthorne, Larry Vickers, Bill Wilson. I would say Masad Ayub, but I can't stay awake long enough to hear all he got to say. But, and so Ken had this 1911. It was built by a gunsmith in North Carolina. And I don't know if you've met many Southerners, but if you slap their state on anything, they're going to be all over it. And so, it was built by a smith in North Carolina. It really, when it comes to a fighting gun, it's kind of my dream setup. It's got a square trigger guard. I don't use a square trigger guard, but I think they're really cool. Square trigger guard, it's got 20 LPI front and back, front strap and mainspring housing checkering. It's got the old black T finish from like the Springfield Professional. This gun was built in the early 90s, so that was kind of the heat. McGivern style gold bead front sight. It's built on a Colt, which I love Colt. I'm a Colt fanboy, despite Colt being Colt. Ring hammer, commander hammer. It's a beautiful gun that even without the connection to Ken, I would be drawn to it. But when he gave that to me, I'm telling you, it was an emotional experience for me. And I hadn't had a an emotional experience with guns. And that just reaffirmed, not to get off track, but that just reaffirmed that whole, I want to have guns that when I present them to my kid, or if there's a guy like me one day and I'm, 70 some years old and whatever, and he's all in the 1911s, and I present that to him, it's an emotional experience for him. But to get back on track from there, I didn't want to forget about that before I went too deep in the weeds. So I went up to see Ken. Ken and I have gotten to be pretty close. We had talked we had spoken. I'm trying to use a little better grammar here. We have spoken on the phone a few times. Well, that's kind of an understatement. Usually once a week. If we go more than 2 weeks without speaking on the phone, it's sort of it's good. It's a kind of a, hey, what's going on? And we usually talk for about 2.5 hours when we do finally get on the phone. After that, we email a lot. Ken does not text. In fact, I actually did not know Ken owned a cell phone until we went out and met him, or when I went out to his spread there. Even all the times that I had seen him at shows and we went out to dinner and stuff, I had never seen him use a cell phone. And we were on the way to Missoula for the gun show because he was like, let's go to a gun show, kid. And we're driving down the road and he out of his front pocket, because of course out of his front pocket, comes a damn iPhone. And I'm like, where the hell did that come from? And he goes, yeah, I got a cell phone. I said, since when? He's like, I've had it forever. The only person who's got my number is Paula, his wife.
Yeah, that's smart.
and anytime he leaves the house, which isn't often, that he kind of figures that's the only person that needs to get a hold of him. So anyways, we email a lot because that's kind of his form of texting. So we email a lot. He sends me pictures of guns. It's great. So we went out there, went to a gun show, shot a lot. He taught me a lot of stuff. I mean, he fixed a couple of things I kind of had, kind of those inherent training scars of teaching yourself. He kind of tweaked a little bit of that. And of course, it's one of those things you got to build on that, or you can't just go one time. And I've been working on that ever since. But, he and I had a great visit. We saw some really cool guns. Of course, mostly 1911s, although I'm getting really big into revolvers as of late. So he was very, very
Jefe just sat up in his seat.
Yeah, it's like, oh.
Yeah, Ken was all too happy to pull out his revolvers, and we had a great time. He taught me a lot about shooting revolvers too, which I'd taken a revolver class in May. And funny, again, not to detract, but I will, I'm Mr. Sidetrack, so I'm sorry. Yeah. But I took that revolver class. I had one revolver at that time. And it was actually funny enough, I'm sponsored by guns.com. And I'm getting ready to go to the revolver class. And the only revolver I had was my 1917 Smith & Wesson. Technically, it wasn't a 1917 because it's commercial production in the 20s. It would have been a DA 45 second model hand ejector, but it's essentially a 1917. It's built on old 1917 parts that were surplus from World War I. Not the point. It's in immaculate condition. And as much as I was like, damn, that'd be a cool gun to shoot a revolver, a 500 round revolver class with, I thought, I don't know if that's what I want to do. So I reached out to guns.com a week before, and I'm like, I need a revolver. They had a used Blue Horton 1984 or 85 built gun, model 29-3 44. You know me, I'm sitting over here saying, you can't carry a Austrian plastic 9mm pistol because it makes you have estrogen. So I wasn't going to have no 38, and so I got the 44, and I shot that 500 round class with a 3-inch barrel 44.
Yeah. And shooting 44 mags, not 44 specials, right?
I was shooting 44 special. And it's funny because I was going to buy the place I was buying them. They had the mags for the same price as the specials. Yeah. And even Ken goes, Doug, he goes, kid, do not shoot mags that whole class. He goes, you will beat either you or the gun apart.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, okay. But anyways, I did shoot specials. But I was shooting the biggest caliber and the shortest barrel at that class. And after that class, I became really intoxicated with revolvers. And I've like quadrupled the amount of revolvers I have now. In just that short time.
Your 45 fits your Colt.
Oh yeah,
thing. I remember seeing that a couple weeks ago when you started posting that on the internet, and
yeah, I got that one when I was up with Hack actually.
Oh really? It was at that gun show in Missoula.
Well, actually, so Ken, he's a real gun guy. We stopped at every gun store on the way to the gun show. We did not pass one, even the ones that were like a little bit more big boxy.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't matter. We were going. And so in the back of the case, there was this. It was actually in an M3 shoulder holster that had been stretched out for that gun.
Okay.
And it was in the back of the case. There was a bunch of guns piled all around it because it was like their, I don't know what you'd call it, their cheap used gun section.
Yeah.
And I just the holster caught my eye, and I was like, well, let me see that. So I finally got the guy's attention. He pulled it out. They had like, it was like had 650 on it or something like that. And of course they knew who Hack was. So just by being with Hack, they were like, oh, if you want that old gun, nobody's ever even looked at it. Well, you can have it for $500. I went, whoa,
sold.
Yeah. So I got that, picked that up. It's a pretty incredible gun. It's obviously it's not a real Fitz. I mean, they only made like 200 some real Fitz Colt revolvers. However, that was an incredibly popular modification to revolvers. And in the case of Lone Wolf Gonzalez, 1911s. But it was incredibly popular with revolvers at that time. So, because people don't realize, Fitzgerald, who came up with that at the Colt factory, was kind of one of your first firearm influencers. As much as I hate that word, but I mean, he wrote books that people, just swore by. He went to all the matches. He worked on people's guns while they were there. He was a big figure in firearms culture in the early 1900s. And so when Fitzgerald says, "Hey, trigger guard should be cut off, hammer should be bobbed, and the barrel should be shortened," a lot of people followed suit with that. And so this is definitely a period done piece. It's got a lot of stuff that you can tell it was done probably between the 20s and 30s. It's on a U.S. property gun, so it's got U.S. property under the barrel. It's a proper Colt 1917 rather than I think a new service is what they would have called those that weren't technically like the 45 ACP guns. So it's pretty sweet. It's been bobbed. The hammer's been bobbed. It's got top strap checkering on the top of the frame strap, serrations. They actually moved the sight back onto the cut down barrel, which is pretty unique to see on a gun of that period. They cross checkered the trigger, which was common. They cut the trigger guard, obviously. They bobbed the back of the grip frame and actually shortened it a little bit and shortened the grips or the stocks to match. They took out the lanyard loop and filled in that hole. So I mean, it's a proper, it's a proper early 1920s, 1930s concealed carry piece.
Yeah, and it's cool to see. I think we talked with Ryan from Hamray Forge several months ago about the Roland Special. It's kind of like not the Roland Special, the Fitz Special, but it's kind of Fitzgerald was kind of like the Chuck Pressburg of his time, where whatever he kind of said, and he had some data to back it up, but a lot of people went through that. When Chuck Pressburg came out with the Roland Special, the amount of people that went out and converted their Glocks to be, or whatever they had to be, as close as they can to a Roland Special was outlandish. And so it's always cool to see how influencers, I hate using that word too, man. It's like the worst word to use, but how people that used guns and how people that actually were relying on them and modified it themselves, probably in their garages at first, like, hey, I need this to do X, Y, and Z, later became almost industry standard, or at least the industry specials that people were craving for at the time. Is there anything like that for the 1911 with Browning's designs at all? like that has that kind of lineage or desire, or is it just the perfect gun out of the box?
Well, this is one of those things where, the interpretation of the sacred text is going to be, it's going to depend on the chapter or the, faction in which you serve. 1911 people are a lot like, Christians in the fact that they're, we're all kind of shooting for the same goal, kind of. There's definitely somewhere, I don't know if that's the case, but we're all kind of towards the same goal. We just got different ways of reading the directions,
Gotcha.
and so there's a lot of folks who will say, hey, you know what, 1912 manufactured gun, boom, that's it, don't touch it. There's a lot of people who will say, the golden era of custom guns, probably the late 60s to the early 90s, I'll say. There's some definite heaters in that category that you could say, okay, that is the perfect 1911. And then there's people who are wrong and want to say, people, guns that are like, really famous 2000s guns like, Kimber SIS is kind of the way to go. And they're wrong.
I have a special, I guess I'm wrong. I have a special place in my heart. SWAT is my absolute all-time favorite movie. And they have those Kimber, the CT2s in them. And I remember being, 15, 16 years old, going to theaters like 3 times to watch that movie and coming home like, I need this. And then I realized that I would have to be saving a lot of pennies for one of those, especially like an LAPD one. Even today, like I think I checked a couple weeks ago, they were like $2 or $3 grand for like an LAPD one.
Yeah, not the heat, not the heat, not my style for sure. But I'm definitely a little more classic. My collection, it's one of those things where I get pulled in 2 different directions. To me, visually, the best looking 1911 is the original. Mm-hmm. That is, to me, it can't get any better. But however, I've really got into the world of the vintage custom gun. I think that comes from working for Alchemy Custom Weaponry. Our mottos around that, kind of classically designed custom 1911. And so I've always been into kind of the older guns in general, but since coming on with Alchemy Custom Weaponry, I'm telling you, I have become king FUD. And really, to me, the most interesting lately, I'm sure this will change back to pre-war guns, which I love pre-war guns. I got several. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here. Mm-hmm. But the vintage custom gun, that's 60s to 90s, is really a hot spot for me right now, and I'm lapping up every decent deal I can find. In fact, today I won a Wilson. It's built on a Colt, but it's Wilson Combat LE Comp from the 80s. Won that on Gunbroker, and I hate Gunbroker, but I wanted that gun really bad. So I really like the vintage era of custom guns. I mean, just right here, just to kind of give you a little bit of sampling, I've got an Armand Swenson, which if you're into 1911s, that is one of the kings of the early custom combat 1911. I've got a Swenson Bobcat, above it's an LE Comp, another LE Comp. I got 3 LE Comps. I really like them. Got the Pegram Hackathorn gun, got a Novak, got a Clark Custom from the 90s. Actually, that's my birth year gun. So that's a 1998 Colt 1991 A1 that was sent to Clark for the Combat Meltdown package, which is a pretty rare package, actually, to have those 2 packages combined. But that's a really cool gun. But yeah, those kind of guns, my 2 dream guns are kind of indicative of those 2 categories. On one hand, it's a pre-war, unmolested Colt Super 38 government model. On the other hand, it's the freaking Packmeyer Combat Special. Mm-hmm. So those 2 guns kind of fight for my dream overall gun, but that kind of gives you a good idea where I'm at and what I like in a 1911.
Okay. Well, that's a great transition over to, so you mentioned Cabot and Alchemy. So who is Cabot and who's Alchemy Arms?
Oh yeah, oh man, we're gonna get to work here.
Oh yeah,
we're gonna have to start building the company right now. Okay.
Well, we got you.
I like that.
You got 38 minutes right now, so whatever you guys needed.
No, you're fine. Listen, here's the thing about I'll get into that. But yeah. So Alchemy Custom Weaponry and Cabot Guns. So Cabot Guns founded in 2011 by Rob Biankin, and basically Mr. Biankin, who's one of the company's owners now. Mm-hmm. He is actually a Canadian immigrant, and he came over before he was a citizen. And I'm kind of giving you the broad strokes here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he came over, he saw 1911, he thought, man, that is just the coolest thing ever. Who doesn't? When he moved here, he's like, I want to do this, but I want to do it in a way that's never been done. So, of course, that spawned the Cabot line, and Cabot has done what no one's ever done. I mean, the big one, obviously, being we made two guns, a right and a left hand. First of all, we make left-handed guns, which is wild. So if you have been afflicted by that satanic, disease of being left-handed, we can offer you a little salvation. In being, you can have a full left hand in 1911, even to the rifle twist, or excuse me, the barrel twist, we'll call it. The barrel twist will be left-handed.
Oh, so
pretty wild.
So I'm left-handed, so I've been afflicted with the curse of having everything backwards, and my wife bullying me every time she sees me stir a pot, saying I'm doing it wrong. So yeah, that's
Well, listen, come on in, brother. The water is fine, is what I'm trying to tell you. We'll baptize you in the name of John Moses Browning. Boom, left-handed 1911. But so we do the left-handed guns, but we did a right and a left-handed gun, obviously a meteorite, full meteorite, except for obviously like the barrel, your firing pin, things that just should not be meteorite. Mm-hmm. But the majority of the gun was meteorite. The grips were meteorite. Not a cheap project, into the mills. So that kind of put us on the map there as a company that would do literally anything. And since then, we've really pushed the envelope. I mean, just this past year, we've done a really cool gun, really special gun, where we had a group of blacksmiths who got together. People were donating, like, for instance, they would donate like an M1 helmet that their grandfather wore onto the beaches of Normandy. They'd cut out a little piece of that, put it into the fold. A lot of that, though, was made from sand from the beaches, which, you're not supposed to have. And I'm not going to tell you how we got it, but it came from a highly decorated U.S. Veteran. So we don't ask questions. But essentially, we took these materials, Thompson submachine gun, bolts, M1 Garand receivers that were demilled, and forged them. This group of blacksmiths did a project and forged them, using sand too, from the beaches, Omaha and Utah, and forged basically a blank for us to make a gun out of. So we have two 1911s we made earlier this year. One of them we're keeping for posterity. One of them we auctioned it, but all the proceeds went to a veterans charity. But essentially, it's made out of artifacts from the Normandy beach landing, as well as sand from Omaha and Utah. So that's a pretty cool project. One of those where I'm not going to lie to you, every time I'm kind of stuttering over my words here because I get a little emotional about that project. But we do crazy stuff like that. We've done just pushing the envelope. How far can we push the envelope of the 1911 as far as an artistic design? Now, in contrast, stark contrast to that, we have the Alchemy brand. So Alchemy the brand was purchased from Rob Sholin, who joined the company. He's now started his own company doing one-off guns and as a one-man shop, like kind of like Jason Burton of Heirloom Precision. So Sholin Performance is his one-man shop. But before then, from 2016 to now, Rob Sholin was kind of heading the Alchemy Custom Weaponry line. So Rob kind of did a one-man-ish shop deal before where you'd send him guns and he'd work on them. He got really, he was really well known. He worked for Springfield Custom Shop, worked for Les Bear, worked all around the industry, but he's a particularly good 1911 smith. And so he had Alchemy Custom. Cabot bought that and brought him in-house in 2016, I believe. Started the brand Alchemy Custom Weaponry. Sholin looked at the market, saw there was a big hole. No one was doing a high-end classic gun. You can go to Wilson Combat and get something with black T. You can go to Nighthawk and get something with all sorts of machine cuts. You don't even know it looks like a 1911 anymore. You can go to, Ed Brown and get whatever Ed Brown's making. And so there wasn't really a classic 1911. Blued as a standard option. And so we developed that line. I mean, and there's a lot of cues early on, design cues that Sholin went with that I really appreciate now as the guy who does sales and marketing for us. For instance, our frames don't have the scallop cut out like a what we call a post 1924 or 1911 A1. So the scallop on a 1911 actually didn't show up until 1924, or right about. They begin when they begin the A1 project in 1924. The transitional guns, some of them did, some of them didn't. But the scallop kind of showed up around 1924. Our frames actually do not have the scallop like the original 1911 that kind of was done between 1911 and about 1923-24. So pretty cool stuff, just little things here and there. Bluing obviously being our standard option, and that brand has really grown. As you've seen, the market really has been appreciative of retro styled firearms. I mean, we see the complete rebrand of the carry handle AR-15. Mm-hmm. And so this kind of blued and hard chrome kind of classic fighting 1911 has really seen a lot of growth and a lot of support in this market. And so that's kind of Alchemy Custom Weaponry. Everything's hand fit and finished. There's a ton of man hours in each one of those pistols, and they're beautiful. Even before I started working for Alchemy, I was a fan. I actually had an Alchemy Quantico high cap before I started working for the company, which is something you don't really see of a sales or marketing guy in the high-end 1911 world. Usually they don't come into their 1911s until after that. I was a fan of the company, and that purchase kind of put me on their radar. And of course, I got really well known for 1911s, and they kind of wanted to hire me. So that's how I ended up here.
Yeah. Just to, so the other, like about a month ago, we went to go shoot with Caleb, and he brought out his Alchemy that he has, I guess, gifted / earned. And he told us the story behind it, that it was a marketing gun, probably had maybe tens of thousands of rounds through it and been rebarreled and kind of reworked, but how it was, even after all that use and abuse, man, it was still a buttery smooth, beautiful gun. Unfortunately, he did not bring any 45 out, so all we could do is this dry fire.
Oh man,
I know.
What is wrong with that kid?
It's. I think
I'm gonna have to go over and whoop his ass.
So you kind of. So what do you do for Alchemy, and I guess how did you get involved with it in being their photography / thunder thighed American to promote the brand?
Yeah, man. So I actually went into the industry straight out of college. I worked at a gun store in college. Realized I did not want to do that very long after college. So I went to SHOT Show. By that point, my Instagram page had grown a little bit. We're talking like 9,000 followers, okay? And I'm not saying to anyone listening, if you got 9,000 followers, okay, listen, don't get your damn thong in a twist. I'm not saying that's not good. I'm just telling you where I was. So, yeah, I was about 9,000 followers. I'd made enough contacts. At that point, I think I had got a couple of guns here and there, and a few people had sent me the guns that I had to send back. So I kind of got into the mix there, and this company that I'd done some work for, they got me into SHOT Show, which, funny enough, nowadays, if I would say people like that are part of the problem. So, yeah, this is definitely me being a little bit hypocritical.
Yeah,
but I got into SHOT Show, man. I brought me a stack of resumes. In fact, my stepfather actually had to pay for my flight because I couldn't afford. I could have, but it would have been really tough for me to afford the flight and the hotel and all that stuff. So he actually helped me a lot. I gotta give him credit. But I brought a stack of resumes, dude, and I didn't party. I didn't do nothing in Vegas. All I did was hand out them resumes. Okay, mm-hmm. And only one company was interested, which, lucky enough, was the company that was based right down the road from me. And I mean right down the road, as like I could walk to where their factory was from my parents' house at the time. And so it was US Optics, Zero Delta, and Branded AR. So those are all three in the same conglomerate there. So I actually started with US Optics right out of college for nothing. I mean, no amount of money. and I'd never used a camera before. And they actually, in the interview, I had the interview, and they were like, "Oh, how good are you with the camera?" And my dumb ass pulls up a picture I'd taken on my phone. I was like, "Oh yeah, here you go." And they're like, "No, we mean like a real camera." I'm like, "Oh, this is just as good." And they were like, "Well, here we go." So they kind of gave me an incubation period. They're like, "Listen, we really, we need you for marketing, but we really do need someone who can take pictures and do that for the website and that sort of thing. So here's the deal: we'll give you like 90 days, learn how to use a camera, and if not, we'll have to reevaluate kind of what we're doing here." And I was like, "Well, shit, I don't want to lose this opportunity." So I went out and bought the same camera they were using, and which, again, not cheap, and I bought it used. The same camera that we were using, and every day after work, that's all I did, take pictures. I didn't even know what the hell I was doing. I just knew that, SD cards don't run out of film, and I was taking pictures left and damn right, and just editing everything. And finally, it got to a point where it was acceptable for their purposes. I started doing a lot of stuff with them. Kind of moved up the ranks a little bit here, as time went on. Started kind of looping in with some sales stuff. At the same time, my Instagram was taking off. Or not taking off, but it was getting bigger. And I'd always had a love for the 1911. In fact, in my office at US Optics, I had, if you looked at where my seat was, on over one shoulder was a giant picture of a 1911. Over the other shoulder was a picture of John Moses Browning. So I got really well known for being a young guy into 1911. I started writing for the Armory Life, Springfield Armory, and they gave me a big opportunity by allowing me to write for them. I wouldn't have let me write for them. If I was in charge of the Armory Life, I would not have let, however old Eli Duckworth I was then write, because I didn't know, looking back now, I didn't know nothing. But they gave me a big opportunity. Worked me into the industry more. I got a little bit more known for being kind of a young kid in the 1911s. And then kind of all of a sudden, three, and I won't say who they are other than Alchemy and Cabot, obviously being one company together, but three big 1911 companies came after me, like within the span of a month. So I actually flew pretty much all around the country that month, going to interviews. Three and the other two extremely well known, extremely large companies. And just there was something about Alchemy as far as like the brand, the attitude behind the brand, and of course, as I mentioned, I was a major big fan, of the guns themselves prior to that. So the other thing too, and I'm not to try to sound, I don't know, like a bit, I don't know what this would sound like, but I actually like the challenge of building the brand from the ground up. My boss, Nick, kind of really did a lot to get the brand out of the hole, to say. But I knew that of the three brands, one of them wasn't established, really. And I wanted nothing more than to be on the ground floor of establishing what I would consider to be one of the next big semi-custom 1911 companies in the business, and one that really has an appreciation of how things used to be in a world that has really forgotten where we came from in the custom 1911 world. So anyways, yeah, so I'm sales and marketing over Alchemy. Technically, I'm under the Cabot umbrella. I do a little bit of work on the Cabot side. If you were to call in and talk to me about Cabot stuff, I can work with you, but a lot of times I will defer that to my boss, Nick. But pretty much everything through the Alchemy side I handle, and that's sales, marketing, customer service, warranty. This obviously the media you see. I do our YouTube channel, do our Instagram, do our Facebook, all of that stuff. So as far as the point of contact for the brand, that's kind of what I've become. You call Alchemy Custom Weaponry, 9 times out of 10 you're getting me, or I'm calling you back.
All right, so so you said warranty, so I'm assuming that side of the house is pretty dead, but yeah, that is quite a journey. It sounds like you've had, and it's not nothing to be like, I guess, discouraged about it. It's that with the wanting to help build a brand, I couldn't imagine, being a young guy and either working for a big conglomerate that you just kind of be brought into the fold and forgotten, or you have the opportunity to do something great. And it's awesome that you took that opportunity, man. Because if not, first of all, we wouldn't be here. And then part two is we wouldn't know, like Mark and I wouldn't know anything about the cabin alchemy. We saw you guys at SHOT last year. It was awesome to see all those.
Technically this year.
Was it this year?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
January. That's still part of this year.
Math has never been my great subject, but and it was, not. And I'm not a huge 1911 guy. As I said before, Kimber, the CT2 custom, and I've only owned one. It was a Rock Island Armory that got promptly removed from my presence. But it was awesome to see at like Cabot all those beautiful guns that they have. The gun of the months were all there, and then talking to you for a little bit, but mainly with Caleb about alchemy guns, and then getting to play with Caleb. So you're crushing it, man, with this stuff, with the marketing and branding of alchemy, at least, man. It almost makes me want to start saving some pennies for a 1911 that I do not need in my life right now.
Well, listen, I got two things for you. First thing is about saving for that 1911. All I'm going to say is if you save for that 1911, son, you better save for some pants with some bigger rooms in the balls, because you're going to need it, because that's going to make your balls swell up. Now, you talked about SHOT Show, and so I'm sure you're familiar as far as when it comes to the marketing side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Alchemy does marketing of the 1911 the way it's probably never been done before. It is hyper, the word you would use to describe it would be exaggerated. I just say it's, the gospel. And so if you look at like our social media pages, you'll see a lot of comments that are pretty wild. They're things you don't expect to see from 1911 companies, because traditionally that's a little bit more stale style. I'm just going to be honest with you. 1911 marketing has been pretty stale in recent years. I mean, really, other than the fact that the guns themselves kind of bolster that marketing power, there's really nothing that makes you excited about 1911s from a marketing perspective from a lot of companies. I saw that, and my personality being what it is, and so of course we try to exploit that opportunity every time we get it. I'm sure you know about, and I'm about to tell you something that ain't never been. This will be the first time this publicly gets mentioned.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm going to try, because we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do about it. But I'm going to try to be as vague, but as kind of tell you what's going on as possible.
Okay.
So anyway, about our signs, the sign marketing. Well, keep in mind that, and we talked about this a little bit before we hopped on, Alchemy Custom Weaponry, small company, kind of in the larger umbrella of Cabot as far as like funds and stuff. Cabot's kind of the show pony, right? So I have to find ways to get Alchemy to stick out. And when we go to SHOT Show, right, everybody's coming out with every whiz bang gadget they can.
Yeah.
A blue 1911 does not stick out of the fold unless you got an eye for that and you're a man. And so I thought, well, you know what? I seen them old boys who do the whole sign deal in New York, and I always thought it was kind of funny. I thought, well, why don't we do a little bit of this sidewalk preaching? And so the first year, went up there. I think the sign said something like USA 2, Austria 0.
Mm-hmm. I remember that one.
Yeah. And held that in front of the old G-Lock booth. No big deal. It drove a lot of traffic to the booth. A lot of people came up being like, hey, did not even know this company existed. Saw this circulating. That's pretty awesome. So this year I'm sitting there and I'm like, how are we going to do that without, really doing anything super offensive? Well, about that time, of course, I found out that the Glock conglomerate was a conglomerate. In fact, that they owned a horse, and the dressage horse business, and specifically, the semen of said extremely expensive horse. And hey, to their credit, they're like really, really good at that.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily saying I want to be known for that, but hey, roll what you got. And so, anyways, they're extremely well known, extremely prestigious in that space. Well, I found this out. A comedian actually had talked about this in Instagram, and I was like, no fucking way. And so I looked it up, and sure enough, Glock Stallions is the website.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, they own ordersemen.com. And listen, okay, I'm 26. I was 25 at the time of SHOT Show. You try to put those kind of things in front of a mid 20-year-old, hopped up on testosterone kid, I'm gonna make a joke about it. And so, of course, the sign about Browning not jerking off horses went up, and it was massively a hit. But much like Icarus, flew a little too close to the sun. And all I'm going to tell you is that, and this is really all I can say until we do an official release, but Eli will not be returning to SHOT Show.
Oh no!
Oh
man!
So
whoops.
Now, furthermore, let me tell you, it was not Alchemy or Cabot, Guns making that determination. Let's just my bosses have always been extremely supportive. They understand that drives traffic. In fact, my boss is the one who filmed the video we made. So I'll leave that up to your imagination. But just a little funny story about SHOT Show, and unfortunately, I won't be there. But hey, that's okay, because Vegas is not my favorite place in the world, so I really wasn't super upset with that determination. But a little story for you.
Yeah, I remember I think we were just getting done with the industry, the gun range day, and I remember I was in the hotel room when you guys came out with that video, like early in the morning, like on Tuesday or Wednesday, and brother, it was beautifully edited. I loved the Cindy Larp, the Bonnie Tyler in it. Fantastic video. Actually drove us to your booth, and Caleb there as well. But I'm kind of shocked that actually generated that much kind of controversy. It seems petty in the scheme of things, but when you get your booth right beside big old plastic Glocks, guess you can fly a little to the sun, close to the sun.
Right. Well, and we'll be releasing a statement, I think, on that fairly soon, I would think. But it's one of the things. The biggest thing I'll mention, or the biggest thing I'll miss, is the Antique Arm Show after SHOT Show. I will miss that because I really enjoyed that a lot. But hey, it's all right. We'll power through it. And I'll probably get more work done, honestly, not being in Vegas.
That's probably true.
Well, I mean, you could always go incognito.
No, we will never recommend. We would never recommend that.
No, just
out of curiosity, have you seen the advertisements for "Am I Racist" by the Daily Wire?
Oh yeah.
I'm not. It's just. I don't know. It's just weird.
It's just weird.
We should do one of those, but
pull your hair up into a man bun, and everybody forgets who you are.
Yeah.
Maybe Clark Kent had something going.
Yeah, get some glasses.
Yeah.
And you call it good. So, and now you are on top of all of your work with Alchemy Arms. You also now started your own show with Caleb.
Oh yeah. Yep. Steel and Style. Yep.
So you guys are at episode 3 was released just a couple days ago.
Yep, that was our live episode. So it allowed people to kind of talk to us as we fielded questions. I was a little bit more out of pocket because here's the deal: as much as you couldn't believe it, Caleb calms me down a little bit when we're by ourselves.
Yeah.
But the minute that other people are introduced, I get all jacked up again. So it was a pretty fun episode. Basically, what the premise of that whole project is, Caleb and I, we're cut from the same cloth, but cut at two different ends as far as like what we're interested in. And what I mean by that is we're both interested in classic firearms, the history of those classic firearms. We're interested in not dressing like an idiot, as a lot of people our age do, because Caleb's a year older than me, but we're still mid-20s, which you would never guess that. Caleb looked like he's 12.
Yeah,
and I look like I'm close to retirement. But
it's that mustache.
But we really want to focus on not just the firearm aspect, because as Caleb says, and trust me, this is definitely a Caleb saying, because this is too British sounding for me, but these things don't exist in a vacuum. Meaning like dressing well, watches, having things that are, and it's not even about like them being expensive, but just having a little bit of pride of ownership. We keep in mind our generation is that grunt style, 5'11" pants. I keep this is going to sound a little thud, I know, but Glock 19, but I have 2 33 round magazines on me, kind of deal. Like that's the kind of people that we're growing up with, and we kind of went, that's kind of fucking lame. And Caleb, of course, is a big proponent of the Walther PPK, which is dumb. The only thing that gun has ever done well was when someone turned it on themselves at the end of World War II. And so, but guess what? It's a classic gun. It's a stylish gun,
And they're made in the USA now. So, I mean, that's at least something to go for them now, right?
Well, yeah. That's sure. That makes people sleep better at night. Yeah. But, and I'm in a 1911, and obviously the ancillary pistols with that, dressing nice. I definitely have a little bit different of a style than Caleb does, of course, but it's all kind of dress, it's not that cookie cutter stuff that you see a lot of people our age wearing. And it's all inspired stuff too. Like I'm pretty heavily inspired. You'd never guess it, by Magnum PI.
Yep.
Yeah. And Caleb, of course, is inspired by James Bond, which, I mean, I don't know if inspired by is a strong enough word, but
let's say it's more of like a ritualistic, sacrificial,
absolutely
diehard follower.
I thought I was really big into something with 1911s. He exceeds my nerdiness with James Bond tenfold, but it's one of those things where we're really interested in analog things and things with a little bit of style, things with a little bit of class. Both of us, Caleb actually got me into watches. I really wasn't a big watch guy before, and Caleb kind of introduced me to them. And, little by little, I've grown my watch collection. I mean, it's a watch person would probably look at my watch collection and say, this is ridiculous. But then I would point to 30 1911s on the wall and be like, well,
your gun collection is kind of pathetic. So,
but yeah, sure. And so, but I really like, the way a watch complements things. And it's one of those deals where now I start kind of when I wake up, and if I'm changing my carry gun, I look over at the watch box and I think, maybe this watch pairs better with this gun. No one's going to see the gun. I carry concealed, but it's one of those things where I know. And it's just something that you have a little bit of pride in what you're doing, and it's something I've always kind of thought, like, I don't want to be the NPC, which is a young person term for obviously non-player character. I want to be, another young person term would be the moment, if you will. It's just like I want to be remembered. You want to stand out a little bit. So. Yeah, I've enjoyed getting into watches. Of course, my car is literally the example of that. And so on that Steel and Style podcast, basically what we're doing is we're trying to encourage people young and old to celebrate, classically designed things, why they matter, that they're still usable, they're still useful, in a world of Apple watches where you can damn near, send pictures of your wang to the old girl. off of it. I don't know if they do that. I'm sure it's coming. You know, wear a freaking Rolex. You know, it's just one of those things where that's the whole premise behind Stealing Style. I know I go off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
No. So I remember. So I listened to you guys' first episode, and I my favorite part about that was I think Kayla was talking about doing some yard work, like strapped with the 1911, and I was listening to it while I was on my John Deere with my Model 19 K Comp on a holster, just driving around my yard. And that what you guys are trying to do, like, it's actually really been resonating with me recently. Because growing up, so I'm in my mid 30s right now, and Mark's in his mid 40s. So we can just let him know and let the audience know. It's not relevant to this conversation, but growing up, what we kind of, or at least what I kind of experienced was the way you got introduced into a lot of this stuff was the Magpul Dynamics DVDs. Like, YouTube wasn't even a thing back in like the early 2000s. So if you wanted to get like premier firearms training at home, you bought the Magpul DVDs, and all you saw was Chris Costa and Travis Haley in like skin tight polos, 511 jeans, Solomon shoes, rocking Glocks, and they're very at the time highly advanced AR-15s with with Oakley sunglasses. You're like, man, that's the look, that's the style, and emulate that for a long time. And it wasn't until like about 5 or 6 years ago when I started carrying like revolvers more than anything. It's slowly diving back to like, oh, I much rather have, like, I think I mentioned this or talked to you about this a couple of days ago about the Paredes A11. Like, I got one of those watches. It's a beautiful watch.
Oh yeah, great watch.
Great watch. And it's budget friendly. It's not a thing like you're going to be spending out of the bank for, but it's just a gorgeous watch. And that's a couple of years back, I've been trying to find that sort of watch. I've been rocking the Casio F91 whiskeys, the little digital watches most of my life. And now just looking at, it's that ensemble. It's not just I'm carrying this beautiful gun. I'm dressing around the gun, dressing like dressing around the gun's the wrong term, dressing with the gun, selecting watches, selecting like a nice little pocket knife with it, like doing the entire ensemble that all works together rather than just strap on Glock 19, put 511s on and go save the local Walmart from whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You go on.
No, I was just going to say, I absolutely agree. And I think watches deserve a place back in society with fashion. And I know that sounds stupid, right? But they do. I think they're the ultimate accessory, and they make you feel good. There's something about a watch. Like for instance, I was going out. I was down in South Florida, and I was going out 4-inch inseam chubbies, boat shoes.
I got my 6 inches on right now.
Yeah.
Chubby's not the other thing, but
not the other chubby.
Not the other chubby. But...
I had the 4-inch inseams on. I had the boat loafers, the big, oversized, solid color Hawaiian shirt, and the my trucker hat, whatever. And we're in South Florida, so I'm feeling a little, Cubano. So I've got a Super 38 on, and I've got the Rolex, my '68 Rolex Datejust Gold Face. It's a 2-tone Jubilee band. And it's just one of those things, like, you're walking around, no one's you got a gun on, right? But you're walking around like, yeah, you know what? Like, if this is a video game, I'm the freaking main character. I'm the guy you're playing.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where you walk around, you watch people, and it's like, are they just getting by? Like, when they get old, will they look back at their life? And it's not even necessarily with the things they own, right? Like, a lot of this is based around stuff you own, but it's like when you get back and you get older and you've kind of just meandered through life. You've always taken the safe bet. You've always done the practical thing. You've always been in the norm. You've been in vogue. Are you going to be happy with where you're at? I don't want to be in vogue. I don't want to be practical, and I don't want to be normal. So, of course, my style and, gun choice, of course, it reflects that.
Well, it's I'm gonna like loop back to like the heirloom gun. You don't want to look at a picture of your great grandpa wearing, grunt style t-shirt that, has some like I have, DD 214 with 511s and you got inherited.
Just call me a sheepdog.
Exactly. And you inherited his, Glock 19 with his ball sack sweat on it that's imprinted into the plastic, and you'll never get that out. It's always that, you want, like, I always envisioned, like, whenever one of my kids get like my revolvers, there's a picture of me like fly fishing with their uncle, like with their great uncle in the, in like Alaska or something. And it's that entire ensemble, the story behind not just how you're dressed, but also the gun, the whole history behind it. So then, 10, 15, 20, 30, 60 years later, it still tells a story rather than, here's grandpa's Glock. It smells like ball sack and I can't get it out because Clorox doesn't work well with plastic. Or, the frame cracks and you can never use it again. But yeah, the going back to the classic watches, I was Craig Douglas with Shivworks did a show with primary and secondary, and that's when I kind of got influenced back into the old ways, I guess, the things. Craig Douglas, he was talking about, he'll go through the airport and he'll call men with analog watches. Like he's like, that's a man. And then calls everyone with digital watches, like boys, like little kids. Like kids wear those. Men wear, nice watches and dress nicely with analog watches. And after that, I was like, shit, man, he's right. I feel like a child now with my Burger King toy on my wrist.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that, and much like a 1911, somebody sees you got a really cool 1911 and they're kind of in the know, they pick it up on that. And that's someone that you probably want to have a good conversation with. And just like with watches, there's been plenty of people that don't know me. And you got, I've got a Breitling or a Rolex, or even the A11, or I've got the couple Magnum reproduction watches. They notice them, and that begins the conversation, and you can go from there, of course. So it's been a great experience getting into watches. I don't want to get too deep into it because then it starts to cut into my gun and my car fund. So, but I got the 2 Rolexes in the last sweep, and I'm kind of done for a while. And so, yeah.
So what are you wearing right now? What's the watch you got right now?
So the watch I've got on right now is a 1963 Rolex Oyster Date.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not got the original Rolex band. It's got an alligator band. It's a black face, gold numbers, gold text, and then it's got an alligator band. I got that watch, and the reason I'm wearing it now is because I'm going up to a car show. Well, I don't want to. It's not a car show. It's a Concours d'Elegance. I was invited for the 30 under 30 class. Okay, I'm sorry.
What a Concours d'Elegance? Is that some
Concours d'Elegance?
That's French sounding. That sounds.
Yeah. It definitely sounds like it's waved a white flag or two. It's Jay Leno puts on a big Concours up in Newport, Rhode Island. Actually, in the backyard of a mansion, because they got that big row of mansions on the breakers.
Yeah,
and it's actually in the backyard, and you have to be invited to go. And I was invited for what's called the 30 under 30 class. And I've got a 1963 Ford Galaxy, and I wanted a watch of the same year as my car, because that's just, that's how shit works, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so I wanted a watch that was the same year as my car. And I'm going up to that car show next week. Actually Sunday we're trailering, we're putting the car in the trailer and heading up. So I've been wearing that watch because I'm like real antsy. I'm going to wear it up at the show. It's just kind of a note, and it's very subtle, right? It's not a big watch. It's a vintage dress watch, so they're very small face. So it's very subtle, but like it's one of those things where you could be like, yeah, it's the same year as my car. And if car people are anything like gun people, they'll kind of think that's cool.
Are you? Do you have like a 1960 1911 you're gonna bring out there as well, or the time matched
so I
or
have
rematched?
I don't have a 63 1911. I have a couple of 68s, which is actually why I bought my 68 Rolex Datejust, because I have a 68 Colt Super 38 and now a 68 National Match. So I don't know. It's one of those things too, like, I probably carry an Alchemy just for the marketing aspect of it. But yeah, I'm not sure what I'll carry. It's one of those things. I'll have to figure it out the day I do it. But yeah, the gun, the car, all that stuff has to line up perfectly.
So let's talk about the car. So I'm going to be 1,000% honest with you, man. Like, I know nothing about cars, but I seen pictures of that of your Galaxy. It's the purple and like the purple flaming one.
Yeah,
is that a good description of it?
Yes. The purple flaming one is a good description of that car.
So tell us a little, like, I guess, I mean, now that we kind of a little bit know your personality, it does not need a question on why, how that car came to be and what's with the paint job.
So that car is actually, even the story of it's pretty cool too. So that car is 1963 Ford Galaxy 500. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, and very uncommon, it actually has a special ordered 289 cubic inch engine. A lot of those Galaxies had either a 352 or some larger big block like that. A 390 was pretty popular in the Galaxies, especially the 500s. And so it interestingly does have the smaller 289, which was the first year of production in 1963. So whoever ordered the car, and I ran the VIN number, it was definitely special ordered this way. So whoever ordered the car wanted the 289 with it, which was, again, very interesting. So it spent most of its life relatively normal. In the 90s, I believe, the late 90s, early 2000s, it ends up, it's an LA Ford plant car. So it's been in Southern California its whole life up until recently. And it was brought to a guy named K Daddy's Customs. And he's actually a very, very talented and very famous painter now. I think he was just getting started then. And this is one of the first cars he kind of really completed. Then it spent some time down in the Los Bandidos Car Club in Southern California, which is hilarious. And it's a great car. Shaved nose deck. If you looked at that car, took a picture of it in the fashion of like a 60s film camera, it would look like it came from the early 60s Southern California hot rod and custom culture. I mean, it is period correct. It's maybe a little bit further than they would have went on the flames, but that crab claw flame came from Larry Watson in the late 50s. That is all that car is very period correct. It's on bags on all four corners. She'll put that belly on the ground just as quick as you flip the switch. I got white walls on my car because I think they're a proper tire. Yep. And then I got original Astro Supremes, which is a pretty uncommon, and nowadays uncommon. They've been out of production for quite a while. Wheel, so that's pretty rare to have too. Shaved nosed and deck just means all the chrome except for the trim around the windows and the bumpers is taken off. So, and then also the door handles are completely off the car, and the mirrors off the car. So it's a pretty slick ride.
100% street legal, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, those cars don't have to be inspected. So, yeah, brother.
Well, here's a little piece of trivia for you. Can you name a band that has sang a song specifically about the Galaxy 500?
Oh, I definitely know.
No. Jefe, you got something?
No.
Blind Melon. I don't know.
My first thought was the Beach Boys, but I don't think they've ever mentioned one of their.
Yeah, songs. No, they did Blind Melon. Of course, they had that popular song from the mid '90s, but their second album, their first single was about Galaxy 500, and that was right before the lead singer unalived himself with a heroin overdose. So there's that. There's your little piece of Galaxy 500 trivia.
There, that's the only song you can play there in that car now, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I go down the road and listen. I'm a fairly white individual, but I go down the road with my LA hat on, got a 1911 stuck in my waistband, Death Row Records bumping out of that thing. And I'm talking bumping. And, I'll pull up next to people at stoplights and hit the bags and drop that thing on its ass. I mean, it's a fun car. And like you said, usually if you saw a picture of me and didn't know me, you'd think, I don't know about that with that car. And then, once you get to know me, you realize that's probably a pretty appropriate car.
It's almost, it needs more, I feel like.
Yeah, right. It needs more flair.
Yeah, I feel like you need like some, like the glove box to have velvet, like custom storage for 1911s and maybe
I'm working on that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Is, yeah.
And then like a 1911 to match as well.
Well, have you done anything?
I'm working
with
on
the engine?
That too.
I don't know. I may have missed it. Did you do anything with the engine? I mean, have you like completely overhauled all of that, or?
So the engine was tuned when I got it. I mean, it's definitely not stock. It's definitely got a little more horsepower than it would have. When I got it, the gentleman I got it from did not drive it very often. He didn't really understand it. He was a Ford collector, but he collected original Fords, not this. And he didn't even know anything. Like the term crab claw flame didn't even mean anything to him. So I handed the man some money. And, he was doing a lot of things that I would not have done on that car as far as reliability. And like he would use starter fluid every single time he cranked the car up. And I'm like, dude, that's not how that's supposed to be. So I've gone through and, new carburetor, new spark plugs, new alternator. Those cars originally would have had a generator, but new alternator, new a lot of things. So all the reliability stuff I've went through and really worked on to make the car where I could basically walk down there, crank that thing up, take it out at any point of the day, at any time. Like for a lot of people who have old cars, they're not going to take it out in the middle of the day in the summer. Now,
yeah,
I probably won't be really wanting to do that because I ain't got air conditioning and I'll die. But a lot of times it's because their car would overheat. I can get my car out in 90-degree North Carolina weather and it will not go over 190 degrees. I mean, I've got that son bitch tuned where it is just a hell of a cruiser. It cranks up every time you want it to crank up. And, it is just a really reliable car just to be able to use. And I actually do drive it a lot. I mean, if it's a sunny day, that car's coming out of the garage.
See, and that's something that Nan and I need to do is break out my girlfriend has a 1949 Chevy Deluxe. That was her mom's car. That was her mom's high school car. And they kept it into the family. And now my girlfriend has it. And she doesn't know how to drive a manual because it's 3 on the tree. So I've been kind of getting it out and exercising it, but it's been in the garage for a bit. So it's about time. Definitely.
It has no crab claw flames.
No, it does not. It's 100% stock. It is 100% stock.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. I where I'm at on the East Coast, you do not see cars like that. And up until recently, I really was not interested in that. But I actually took a trip to California, and I'm gonna say something publicly, and a lot of people they ain't gonna like it. With the exception of obviously, laws, taxes, and kind of other stuff, California is a badass place. Southern California is probably one of my favorite places I've ever visited. I mean, just one of those deals where I was like, damn, it was one of the few trips where I was like, I don't know if I really want to go home. Idaho was like that for me too, but SoCal, man, there was something about it. And I'd see these dudes driving these big, most of them were Impalas. It's very rare I actually see a Ford lowrider, but see these big old custom Impalas. And I remember asking a guy like, hey man, like, you got this car, but what's your other car? No other car. That was his main car. Now I obviously have a daily driver, but this dude was, this guy had a badass gangster, Impala, and every single day he had to rely on that car to start, and his whole life was put into that thing. And I just was like, man, that's the most gangster thing ever.
Yeah, would you say that it was his like identity at that point?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's so crazy too, because all roads lead back to the 1911. The custom, so the custom car world of the California custom in the late 50s and 60s, you don't understand. The custom fighting 1911 came from Southern California in the late 50s and 60s.
Is that right?
So it's one of those things where, this custom car that shows this era of custom cars in the early 60s is directly parallel to the business that I'm in now of the custom combat 45. And, Swinson and Kings were both out of California, Southern California. In fact, the Southwest Combat Pistol League is actually the thing that basically urged everyone from, hey, let's not just shoot bullseye where we're shooting one shot at a time and we're shooting for accuracy. Let's move on. Let's move with the guns. Let's shoot them fast. I mean, your two-hand grip on a handgun came from Cooper at that Southwest Combat Pistol League. So it's one of those things where I've always kind of in the back of my mind, I look at that car and it parallels the custom 1911 world, and it just kind of makes sense for me.
Yeah, it's always like the travesty of like, especially like SoCal, where it's like culturally, and there's so much significance with like all sorts of different communities, whether it be cars, guns, tech industry. Like it's everyone's mecca, but God, is it a terrible place to go stay for extended period of time.
I was in I was in LA in 2016, and I was like, yep, that's it, that's all I needed. And then 2014 was Coronado Island in San Diego. That was actually pretty nice.
Yes. Yeah. It sounds a beautiful place.
It sounds like Hawaii. It's it's a great place to visit, but God, living there sucks.
Yeah. I mean, that was the moment that I had to step around some feces on the sidewalk, and that was back in 2016. I was like, yeah, I think I'm done.
So
yeah, it's a crazy place. Anyways, I'm sorry.
So how did you get into the I guess the lowrider scene on top of all the crazy stuff that you've been doing? Like, how long has that been a thing, and what kind of sparked that interest?
Well, so when I came back from California, actually the production manager for US Optics, I was still working for US Optics at the time. He came from California because US Optics was from Southern California. And so he was that guy. That man drove a 1952 Lincoln 355 board over, obviously. 355, I mean, a thumper. My boss, when I was at US Optics, said when he would come up to work every day, because that was what he drove every day, that it would rattle the windows. And now his was more of what we call a lead sled, right? So early 50s, black primer, lake pipes. But I think actually his was straight headers. Big 4-inch white walls, hubcaps, that sort of thing. Static drops. So he didn't have bags or anything. And so he helped kind of get me, educate me on a lot of that stuff. So when I came back from California, I was like, I have to have an old car. My dad is a big car guy, but his cars are very stock. Like, we're talking down to like the fender tags. We're talking down to like original paperwork, that sort of thing. I wanted a car that was a custom car. So I actually found a 1951 Ford sedan. It was a 2-door sedan. And my goal was to make that car into a lead sled. My dream was to lower it, bag it, candy paint the roof. I was probably it was black car, and I like a black car with a like a candy metal flake roof, and I was going to have 4-inch white walls, lake pipes, the whole SoCal thing. And unfortunately, again, and to me, the reliability of the car comes first. So I got the car. Spent a whole winter getting that car right. I mean, right. And I had that thing straight headers, okay, because I hadn't put my lake pipes on. And even then, I wasn't going to put a muffler. So it was straight headers. I had to keep headache medicine in the dash, because if you drove that car for more than 30 minutes, you just couldn't stand it. It was so loud. So I had it tuned perfectly. I'm talking the day I finished the last thing on it. which I think it was the last thing the very last thing I did on that day was I tightened up the alternator belt. So got it ready, and I thought, you know what? It's a beautiful day. I'm gonna take this thing to the gym. Okay, it's a leg day. I'm feeling great. Work's going great. This is going great. I'm taking this thing to the gym. So I haul on down there, down the road, and I come to this stop sign, kind of in rural area, and I'm not a speed demon, by the way. Even though I've had cars with a little bit of power, I'm just not someone I was at one time. But there have been things that have now made me think, it's not really worth it. So I drive pretty slow, and so car, it was a stoplight, and I was getting ready to go, and this old man plowed into the back of my car. Just plow. I mean, hit me so hard that I bent the original steel steering wheel around the steering column.
Oh, good night.
And so, I fought with the insurance company, and then I thought, well, you know what? This is a perfect opportunity. I can take the money the insurance company is going to give me, and then I'll take it to the shop, and we'll make it a custom car. Well, the frame was wrecked, and the insurance company totaled it, and they gave me way too little for it. And there was at the time, I didn't have Haggerty, which I would tell anyone that has a classic car to get Haggerty insurance. I didn't have Haggerty insurance. So I got, put through the ringer, took that money and was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to have another car. And so this car, my car, popped up on Facebook Marketplace on a Thursday. I called the old boy that night. He said he had someone coming on Saturday. And luckily I work remote, and I work for people who are just a blessing. And I said, well, what if I brought you a check tomorrow? He goes, well, I guess whoever gets here with the check first. I said, brother, if that car cranks up and goes down the road, I'm bringing you a check and I'm taking it home. And so I did. And this car, it was kind of the direction I wanted to go. It's just one of those crazy things. Like, this is what I wanted. Purple is my favorite color. I wanted a purple car. I love flames, always have since I was a kid. My dad actually used to do decals for NASCAR race cars, and so he taught me the crab claw flame because he used to hand draw those back in the day. And we're talking about the 80s and 90s, but he taught me how to do crab claw. So crab claw flames was something I really wanted to have on the car. This car was pretty much perfect, and I didn't have to do anything. And it's a real California car, built in LA, and then obviously K-Daddy's in SoCal too. So it's the real deal, and it's a car that brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah, it sounds like the car is like almost meant to be. Like it was kind of fortuitous that guy rear-ended you.
Yeah, I missed that 51. I mean, it was a head thumper. I mean, it sounded like you're cranking up a stock car. Like a NASCAR stock car. I mean, it was loud. I remember I had some neighbors at the time that I didn't like, so I would purposely go up there at like 5:30 in the morning and just crank it up. And let me tell you, I don't know if you've ever cranked up a carbureted V8 with no with just straight headers at about 42 degrees at 5 o'clock in the morning with an electronic choke. It is deafening. So
I used to the way back in the day, my first truck that I drove until it literally just fell apart on me was a 77 Chevy K20, and I let my uncle borrow it for a little bit while I was playing Army for a while, and he put straight H pipes through it. So that thing everyone hated it. Like at 4 o'clock in the morning when I was getting up for like PT or something like that, turning that truck on and having the carburetor kind of warm up and secret reg full of gunning it several times. So
damn right, that's awesome. Love it.
No, our neighbors didn't, but it was like in a sleepy college town where people were just finishing partying at 4:30 in the morning when I was getting up for work. But unfortunately, that thing was it was just an old truck that this kind of slowly disintegrated with time.
Yep.
Well, that'll happen, unfortunately. Yeah. But yeah, that's awesome. Cars are awesome. They go right in with the guns. It's one of those things, and I hate to kind of keep saying it, but like, I just kind of looked at myself and I was like, dude, like, a lot of the kids my age, guys my age, friends of mine, I mean, they're all buying, practical cars, practical vehicles. And so, it's funny, like we all got together and here's a row of brand new, practical vehicles. And there I am rolling up, with Tupac on, in a very unpractical car. I mean, the car is the most unpractical thing you could own. And it's just one of those things where it's like, dude, I call it a quarter life crisis, but I was like, man, just like with guns, just like with watches, I don't want to die tomorrow and say, man, I spent my life driving a 2016 Ford Fusion.
It's an 89 Honda. How dare you?
It's just one of those things. Like, I want to do something. I want to be something. And having a car like that, again, it's not for everybody, right? Like, if you don't have the discretionary income for an old car, dear God, do not get one.
Yes.
Even if you do, I would say take a good look in the mirror and then maybe consider it. But it is, it's just like carrying a 1911, man. Are there more practical guns? Sure.
No.
But I mean, practical in what way, right? Like, I mean, this is the original fighting pistol. It is the only gun that was designed 100 years ago that is still in mass production and still being used at the level it is. And so, I mean, almost nothing from 100 years ago can make that claim.
Revolvers, but I mean, we're not going to get technical here.
But even revolvers have made some pretty. Is the registered Magnum still around? Unfortunately, no, honestly, and they'd never be able to make it. But, is the triple lock? The triple lock is around the same time as the 1911, that kind of thing. And revolvers are a little bit of the exception to the rule. But let's be honest, even to a Tactiqueer, if you handed them a 1911 and a new Smith & Wesson revolver, they're going to think the 1911 is more quote unquote practical than the revolver.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you really have to be about that life to be into the revolver game.
Yeah, that's fair. No,
and that was something that I remember when I was growing up, and my dad would constantly have like these old World War II documentaries or movies on, and I would see these pilots climb out of their Wildcats or their Corsairs or whatever, and they've got a freaking revolver strapped to them instead of a 1911, and I'm like, what? Wait a second. They're not supposed to have that. Yeah.
Well, it's weird too, because like even my dad was a helicopter pilot like since like the early 80s, and he was always talking about like he got upset because the Air Force always got the 1911s. They had revolvers all the way up to like the mid 90s.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Until they started getting Berettas.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, fun story on that is I mentioned the Swenson gun earlier. Well, this is actually a pretty special Swenson. So this gun was commissioned by Mr. James Wood, and he had this gun commissioned to go to Vietnam. So he was in the Air Force. He was a crew chief, and he was in the Air Force, and he was a big gun guy. But he was one of those, especially at that period of time, pretty uncommon for someone to be a really big automatic guy. Even at the base core of a civilian gun owner, they're going to probably be more revolver than an automatic in the 60s. Well, he was a big automatic guy, and he realized that when he was going off to Vietnam, he realized he was going to be issued a snub-nosed revolver. I can't remember exactly what the chief special, I don't know exactly the model they used, but he didn't want that. So he had this 1911, it's actually a Bobcat, so it's a cut down government model built by Swenson. And he carried it in an M3 shoulder holster. He snuck it over to Vietnam, carried it while he was in country, and then snuck it back because he wanted a big 45 caliber, what he considered a fighting gun, over a Air Force issued J-frame. A good friend of mine I grew up with, he was a M60 gunner on a Huey, and he actually did a lot of action, kind of in the. We didn't actually go into Cambodia. And Laos.
Yeah.
but he also, same thing. He actually stole some, I believe it was an Army unit. He basically just like kind of did a switcheroo. He threw the revolver into their shit and grabbed a 1911 and stuck it in a shoulder holster. So It's one of those things where, it's always interesting. And that period of sidearms is always interesting because it was a little more cowboy, I think, than nowadays.
Yeah, it definitely hurts to hear stories like that. And then I'm unfortunately still somewhat in, and they hand you the M17 and say, good luck, because it is a peanut butter fucking piece of trash, man. Like, I absolutely hate that thing.
Well, and it's one of those things where, I hate to sound like an asshole, and a lot of times I do, but I kind of joke with folks and say, listen, if you go out of your way to buy a P320 or a P365 and you carry it and you kind of say, oh, I'm a gun guy, I got a P365. I kind of don't. I just assume you're an extremely boring person, and the conversation will be
that's
like
fair. That's fair.
That's funny because like this is the conversation we have all the time. I'm like I'm pocket carrying like 3 revolvers at any point, and then this guy over here has 365s.
Yeah, I have like
a
3
man
different
purse.
365s and a Merce and everything else.
So I'm glad you're on my side, Eli, because I feel like our it's good to see the younger generation picking up on it, and a younger generation, like 8 years younger than me. But it's great to see, like, hear like that's kind of coming back, and everyone we talk to, they slowly do that on the back end. Like, yeah, we had a couple guys that are really big into AKs, and they're even bored with that platform these days. It's like, lever actions and revolvers are just super cool. Or like old, I know like those, the Model 11s we were talking about earlier, those have become really popular. Like you see them all over the place. People, either SBS them and come down, or just get one and modify it so you have like a little bit extra, put an extra extended tube mag on it. So it's like a little more practical and tactical, but everyone seems to be drawn to those kind of guns. What do you think that's kind of the direction this is going these days?
Oh yeah, and I think that, and just for the record, I'm a Gen Zer. I actually think that as horrible as Gen Zers are, they actually even on the liberal side of things. Okay, you look at the fashion that like a lot of liberal people are wearing that actually know somewhat. Some of it's not fashion. Some of it's just being an idiot. But like retro styling is in. There are so many people, like my chick. My chick dresses like, kind of 70s pretty often, right?
Yeah.
Like in very 70s inspired style pretty often, or 60s. You look at like a lot of 90s style is back, 80s, of course, is big. And so you see that even outside the gun culture. But so of course it's going to be in the gun culture. And I think that the younger generation has kind of looked, and it's almost one of these things where this is one of the few generations of firearm owners where there's not really any major advancements in guns. Let's just be honest. We've kind of, right now, we're kind of at the pinnacle of what a firearm could be, especially on the handgun side. But see, what people are saying is, okay, if we can't go forward, why don't we start going back? And so you see a lot of love for like your carry handle AR-15s. I've got several of mine. You see a lot of love for the revolver now. And it's one of those things that when people give them a chance and they stop thinking about everything has to be, hyper practical and, end of the world. Like once they get that kind of out of their mind, they start to realize, oh man, this is actually pretty fun and pretty enjoyable. And in my opinion, the retro firearms, your surplus rifles, your surplus handguns, all of that stuff reminds you that guns should be fun, and they don't always have to be so serious. Now, guns are not toys, all that bullshit.
Yeah,
but
our lawyers are now going to
right.
No.
But like, I really think that people, when they begin to go the route of that retro grade, they start thinking, you know what, this shit's actually really fun, and there's so much to learn on it. And it's one of those things where you keep getting deeper and deeper in the sauce.
Yeah, today I went out to the range and was messing around with that
PTR
one. You're working,
yeah,
okay? But have you ever messed with with the drum sight on a like HK91P, TR91, or even like an MP5 or anything like that, just to zero it for elevation, that is like mind-numbingly frustrating to try to get that thing to adjust, because you have two little detents that you have to push in, and then you have to spin the drum to elevate or depress that portion for just to zero it. I spent probably 45 minutes just trying to get it zeroed,
which is pretty quick for you.
Pretty quick. That's fair. But even still, there was a level of appreciation that's like, this is actually really interesting, because it's completely different than, say, like a M16A2 or even a A1 or even an AK. So to see how, at the time, I guess it would have been SETME or even HK put some thought into how they were going to make an adjustable rear sight that handled elevation and windage, and do so without it ever have to worry about it, being bumped loose or, losing any type of zero. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But anyway,
no, and I'm kind of getting this way too now. Is like I think the past like 6 guns I've bought have all either been like older revolvers or older style guns. Like I just picked up a Ruger Super Blackhawk in 44 mag because it's huge iron, and that comes there's some practicality to it. Maybe you can argue that, but they're just fun, and I think that's what we have lost our way in the gun community, with being just force fed all sorts of ARs and all sorts of Glocks or whatever. It was exciting for a while to watch what Glock was coming out with. Like, how are they going to respond to the different demands for the customer base, like when they came out with like the 42s and the 43s and the single stacks. But now it's just either this year they're going to add the 34 slide to the 19 frame.
Yeah, so they're going to be about 5 years behind everybody.
Or a 26 with a 26 with a 34 frame. Like,
but PSA is coming out with that X57.
That I'm actually really excited about that one. Still, I am actually really excited about that one. But and then also cool, my dad just picked up a Mini 14, so I'm super stoked to go shoot that thing.
Cool! I absolutely love Mini 14.
You got one yet, or?
I got 2. I got a GB and I got a regular 16-inch blued gun. I got a stainless GB and I got a 16-inch blued gun. Both with Samson folding stock.
That's the correct answer. I'm so mad. He was looking at those and he's like, which one should I get? Should I get the synthetic or the wood? I'm like, obviously you're gonna have to get the wood. And then I showed him the Samson stocks and like, he should get this one. He goes, no, man, that's too tactical. That's too much. Like Kamala Harris is going to take that one away from me. I was like, okay, Dad. No. Okay, well, do whatever you want, but the second I inherit this thing from you, it's going to get a Samson stock on it.
Well, so the Samson stocks, they're phenomenally made. I know the people at Samson pretty well. Ruger actually gave me both of my Mini 14s. I had one back in the day, and I kind of went through this whole tactical phase and sold some guns I wish I wouldn't have for some black guns. And luckily, I'm pretty tight with Ruger these days, and got a 16-inch blued gun with this blued Samson stock. And then when they actually reintroduced the GB model on the stainless, which they call the A-Team. But that's funny enough, the GB model being released this year for the commercial market, that's the first time ever that the GB, which is the government barrel, which has a bayonet lug, that's the first time the GB has ever been offered commercially from Ruger. Usually it's law enforcement buys them and then they go through the surplus market. So it's pretty cool that they actually like went out on a limb and said, hey, we're gonna invest, and that goes to show you Ruger is going to recreate a gun that was probably outdated by when it was made. It kind of goes to show you where the market's at. I think we could see the H&R success with Palmetto State. which that's the only thing I give a shit about regarding Palmetto State. But, they're doing really well. Of course, Alchemy, Alchemy's doing great in the retro firearms sphere, but you see people really get into that stuff. And what's funny is I would almost bet money that the Alchemy customer base is actually one of the younger ones, or as far as demographic goes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really exciting to see young people getting into high-end 1911s.
I guess that's wouldn't be a fair assessment, because I'll use my dad example. So my dad, he was military most of his life. We had guns around growing up. They're mainly hunting guns. We had a couple handguns just for like shits and giggles. But one of his like crowning achievements was, unfortunately, back in this would have been like 2015 to 2016. He bought a Kimber 1911, because growing up, Kimbers were the premier, were great guns. And man, you want to talk about, never see your heroes up close. that man got kicked in the dick so hard that day we went to the range with that gun. And he promptly sold it. His big thing now is collecting mid 60s revolvers. So I'm stoked for that inheritance as well. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the older crowd, they hear Springfield Armory, they hear Kimber, they hear Colt for when it comes to like 1911s, like, oh, these are the premier ones. These are the ones I need. And I guess with the advent of YouTube and Instagram and social media, a lot of the newer high end people like you guys with Alchemy kind of can get that name with the younger crowd, so they're not as tainted when they buy their first Kimber, spend their hard-earned money on a piece of metal that may or may not shoot. So I think that's like a great way to see how Instagram is influencing, not just, and YouTube as well, not just influencing what we're buying, but like the people that are how those people are purchasing these older guns.
Absolutely. Yep. Love it. Love to see it. I'm happy to be a part of it too.
So we're just at the 2-hour mark. Before I want to give the last rant for you. Do you know who was M111 SAS Actual is, or
110?
Yeah.
So you know exactly what I'm going to ask about.
Cody Curry. Yeah. I know exactly who that is. Cody. Let me tell you, I've done a lot of soul searching. So Cody actually has a few Alchemy 1911s.
Okay.
He knows how I feel about him ruining that 1911. He had a 1918 JM marked original. I mean, a absolute cherry of a gun before he got it.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent it to Mark III, and I remember the day Mark III actually. I'm pretty close with the people at Mark III, Kevin. They're actually doing they're doing a 1908 Colt for me right now. One that wasn't in perfect condition, and we wanted to make a proper carry gun. And so I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. So, anyways, he calls me. He goes, listen, you're about to see this gun. And I want you to know that I didn't really want to do it, but it was too good of an opportunity for us and all this stuff. And I went, okay, so I was prepared for that gun before it dropped, but it he knows how I feel about it. I think it's pretty shameful. I like the guy, but it does hurt me to see the whole rage bait thing culminate in let me destroy this 1911. And I know, listen, I've heard all the arguments, right? Yep. It's his gun. He can do what he wants. Sure. Right. But they ain't making more of them.
It belongs in a museum.
Yes.
Right. I felt like Indiana Jones, and it just, and it's one of those things that it hurts more because it's 1911, right? If they'd have done that to some stupid European gun, I probably wouldn't even give a damn. But it hurts more because it's like and as we mentioned all the way back in the beginning of this 2 hours, the 1911 is America's Claymore. Okay. And it's like, man, that's not how a gun like that deserves to be, treated. It's like, damn, that gun's went through, 2 world wars, Vietnam, the hands of civilians. How many Americans' lives has that gun touched? And here it is getting, beat around and cut up into a red dot and that sort of thing. But it's one of those I had to have a lot of come to Jesus meeting with myself. It's not my favorite thing ever, but in turn, I will give it credit where it's due. I think that that audience of whatever you want to call those people kind of got to look at, well, shit. I mean, that gun actually is pretty badass.
Yeah,
so
it's cool. It's kind of like I don't know if you saw the M1 Garand they just did as well.
He converted it to 6.5. Yeah.
Yeah.
So well, that one's not as shameful because I'm pretty sure that one was a CMP gun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or was it a new production? I haven't watched the video yet.
No, a new production barrel from
sure.
Bulla maybe Fulton Armory maybe.
Okay.
But I think the receiver itself is original.
Perfect. Okay. Well, hey, we have officially passed the 2-hour mark. So usually what we end up doing at the end of here is we'll give you about 30 seconds to a minute if you want to impart any dad advice on our listeners. If there's anything that you feel like really important we haven't covered that is life altering or some pearls of wisdom. So floor is yours.
Yeah, it's gonna be real simple. Be a man. Carry 1911.
There you go.
There you go. That's a little bit of Eli in a nutshell, I feel like. So, Mark,
well, gentlemen, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
All right, where can people find you at?
So 1776_DUCK on YouTube and Instagram, and then of course Alchemy Custom Weaponry on just Alchemy Custom Weaponry in general, but Alchemy 1911 on social media. So those 2 places would be great. And then of course, hey, Spotify, the Steel and Style podcast. Give that thing a look. Give that thing a gander.
Okay. Well, hey, Eli, again, thank you so much for this for joining us at the last minute through some hiccups and everything. But
yeah. So, Eli, we'll have all of your contact information down in the description of this podcast, so people can find you and Alchemy and everybody else in the podcasts, so they can get their swab on with Commando Bond and yourself and everything. So, my last 30 seconds. This is gonna sound really weird, but if you're over 40, go get a colonoscopy. Go do it. Go do it. Yeah, I had it done Monday.
And talk about it.
That would come from a guy that carries a 365.
But it's actually.
I got one Monday. He says, and I'm going back next Monday.
Time of my life.
Yeah. No. Men's health. We'll just stick with men's health. Take care of yourself. Get your checkups, do your annual physicals, and all that type of stuff. So that's
I got nothing. So
you got nothing from that?
Nothing.
No,
nothing on top. Get your butthole checked. Well, Eli, hey,
get real worried if you feel both of the doctor's hands on your back.
Yeah,
during the colonoscopy.
Mm-hmm. It was about like that.
Oh, cool. Well, we'll get on out of here, Eli. Again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, really do appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Again, hopefully we can get back together in the future sometime. We'll have you back on and talk. What's that?
Not at SHOT Show.
Not at SHOT Show. No, not at SHOT Show. But we'll have you back on in the future, and we can reminisce on better times, I guess. But with all of that being said, thanks again for tuning in to this episode with Eli, the 1776 Duck. And we will catch you guys next time. As always, don't forget to live, laugh, and LARP. We'll talk to you later. Bye, y'all.